half of 2020, including the Apple iPhone 11 Pro Max, Motorola's Edge Plus, and the Huawei P40 Pro. This video goes over the real-world camera differences that you may find when using their cameras, starting with front-facing video performance and then a bit of an audio test.
This is an audio test to see what the microphones sound like on each of these cameras. This is an audio sample to see how the mics perform on both these devices. This is an audio sample to see how the mics perform on both these devices.
Following this, we've also got samples at different resolutions and qualities where the Motorola Edge Plus's front-facing video is restricted to 1080p 30fps video footage, with the iPhone and the P40 Pro capable of recording up to 4K 60fps. We've gone ahead and done the same at night too, just so you get an idea of how the front-facing cameras on these smartphones handle low-light video recording, once again at different frame rates and resolutions. With that, we can move to this first sample. It's quite clear here that the iPhone and the P40 Pro favor cooler tone processing compared to the Edge Plus. The Edge Plus image, because of this, loses out on the blue of the sky and makes for a duller looking picture. As for the foreground, the blacks and greens of the bicycle are maintained better from the iPhone, which also seems to have the sharper image among the three. There's more evidence of how the phones handle various greens and blues in this case. We feel that the iPhone has the best picture among the three due to the combination of sharpness and the colors retained by the sensor. Now, this one's a bit interesting. We're using the highest resolution images out of all of these smartphones, and you can see how the window is more visible from the picture coming from the iPhone and the P40 Pro. Here, the Edge Plus has the highest resolution image, and we thought we'd zoom in up to 3x in post to get a better idea. While it's more detailed than the P40 Pro's 50 megapixel sample, we think the iPhone's better dynamic range allows its picture to just stand out a bit more. Changing it up, we're using the ultra wide angle lenses on all of these cameras. All three smartphones do a good job with sharpness, however the iPhone and the Edge Plus's samples are just a tad bit sharper. At 1x on the wide lens, this gets reaffirmed, but things start to change heavily as we move into our zoom samples. At 5x and 10x, the Motorola Edge Plus does a weird thing where it zooms in much further than its competition. We asked Motorola about this, but we haven't had a response yet. The iPhone definitely has the better image at 5x, while the Huawei has the more usable image at 10x zoom. Here's another ultra-wide sample where colors from all of these three phones match fairly well. However, the iPhone's dynamic range definitely stands out more, although the Edge Plus isn't far behind in this case. Now, moving to portraits, it's fairly safe to say that each phone's edge detection has improved over when we first saw this feature on smartphones, but even so, the Edge Plus has some blemishes on the top of the head. We also think that the P40 Pro deviates from the colors a fair bit, especially the shirt, which was black but does a great job of skin processing. On the iPhone, you get a balanced photo, whereas on the Edge Plus, the color of the shirt and its design is spot on. However, it over-processes the face, which is a bit of a shame. Moving to portraits of objects, the iPhone starts to struggle with edge detection if you look slightly towards the left of the figure at the back. The more uniform picture in this case comes from the P40 Pro, although the Edge Plus does a better job of detecting the stick, which is the most challenging part. Here's another example where the P40 Pro struggles with the image. The iPhone produces a better result, but the most ideal result is from the Edge Plus, keeping all of the subject intact, including some flowers in the background, which the iPhone blurs in this case. But something you should note is that the iPhone is better at preserving minute detail, especially on those flowers. Using the front cameras of both these smartphones at face value, all the images look similar. However, we think that the iPhone could tone down exposure levels and perhaps make the image a bit cooler. Analyzing a bit deeper, we see that the detail from the P40 Pro's image in this case is slightly better. With portrait images, all the phones had some flaws or the other. It is to be noted that these photos were taken on a timer and a tripod, so the iPhone does a great job with background detection, while the Edge Plus is about 70% there. The P40 Pro just refused to detect the background on repeated attempts. As far as the edge detection is concerned, the iPhone does a great job but ruins the face thanks to its overexposure. The Edge Plus has a great image of the face but again loses out on the top of the head. Moving to night samples, we've got this one first. Without night mode, each phone handles detail surprisingly well. The P40 Pro is the most detailed despite relatively high noise, but the most balanced image comes from the Edge Plus. With night mode enabled though, the P40 Pro has the clear advantage, especially with detail levels. The iPhone is slightly better than the Edge Plus in this case because it preserves more sharpness in the lowest light regions, where the Edge Plus's image is just a bit more muddy. Here's another sample, and in this case we think the Edge Plus has the most balanced photo. photo. The competition is close with the iPhone and the Edge Plus, with the P40 Pro struggling due to the grain in the photo in this case, which is a bit surprising because normally the P40 Pro would be fine. Where performance from the P40 Pro does shine through though is with its front-facing camera at night. Clarity and detail is much better from it, even with its portrait option enabled, and this could be due to the phone's extra sensor up front. The Edge Plus and the P40 Pro also give you this extra night mode selfie option, but here too, the P40 Pro convincingly takes the better image. With that, let's move to some video samples. It seems like the level of detail retained from the Edge Plus and the iPhone 11 Pro Max is higher in this case, but in terms of stabilization, we can see the P40 Pro being more consistent, all at 1080p 30 FPS. On the overall though, for running and walking samples, the iPhone seems to nail a good middle ground. Each phone can also do 1080p video using its ultra wide angle lens, where the Edge Plus lags behind when it comes to quality. You can also toggle the 1080p 60 FPS option, which results in smoother footage, but in terms of comparison, the Edge Plus and the P40 Pro struggle the most with stabilization of that footage. On the overall, 4K 30 FPS samples are fairly identical, but the P40 Pro and the iPhone have an advantage in that they can use the ultra wide angle lens in this case. But the conclusion here is that while the 4K 30 FPS footage is better handled by the Huawei, the iPhone is still the champion of 4K 60 FPS footage, which is something that the Edge Plus is not capable of either. You do get 6K 30 FPS footage on the Edge Plus, which is a novelty, and here is a side-by-side comparison of the same between the other phone's 4K 60 FPS samples for a reference point, both when walking and also when you're running to gauge stabilization. These now are nighttime samples between each of the phones, once again switching between quality to give you guys an idea of the footage the phones are capable of capturing. The iPhone and Huawei perform well at 30 FPS, although at 1080p 60 FPS the Edge Plus does have a slight upper hand. Even quality at high resolutions such as 4K and 6K is impressive from the Edge Plus, although that's not quite the same versatility as being able to switch to a ultra wide view at 4K, which the Edge Plus lacks. But that about sums up this comparison. Let us know what you think down in the comments below, and make sure to like and subscribe. This was Vaibhav, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.